Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad and welcome to my Cloak and Dagger readathon for 2018 wrap up. I know I didn't do as many Cloak and Dagger readathon videos as I was expecting to because unfortunately I got a cold. I did a little bit more detail in my previous video of what happened over December, but it just kind of really bummed me out for all the videos that I had planned and I lost my voice. I'm slowly recovering it back, but it was such a bummer. So I still had a wonderful reading time because of course when you're sick the best thing to do is read and relax and just get better. So I'll take you through all the books that I read during Cloak and Dagger readathon. Now I can't technically remember the order of the books I read, but I'll just go through roughly what I kind of gauge as the order. And first off, it's going to be Rhys Bowen's The 12 Clues of Christmas. I believe it's number 6 in her Royal Spiness series with Georgie as the main character. And I loved this one. It was so perfect. There was so much character development. The plot was amazingly well paced and it was just such a brilliant addition to the series. The series was going quite well. I think it was hovering on an average 3.5 to a 4-star series for me, but this definitely bumped up to a 5 for this book alone. It was so well done and the element of Christmas was thrown in perfectly and I did feel like a bit of a deal. I read this with Kate Howe and I think halfway through I just said, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe I missed this giant clue, which is so evident in the title alone into what happens within the plot. So it is a fabulous, fabulous read. I definitely recommend if you're feeling a bit shaky around book 3 or 4, definitely go up to book 6 and see how you go with it because I found this superb. Next, I read Force of Nature by Jane Harper. This is the second book following Aaron Falk, who is a forensic detective in Australian Federal Police, and this was very, very interesting. I wouldn't say it's perfectly atmospheric as the Dry. I'd probably still recommend the Dry to so many more people if they want to get into that really thriller, almost thriller atmospheric gothic crime. This one had the element of nature being that scary unknown. So this is so true. 5 women go on a hike. They're 5 women from the same company and only 4 come out. And it is a huge manhunt to find the other woman. Now, it happens all the time in Australia. So many tourists go hiking in the Australian bushland and they just end up missing or dying because it is so treacherous, and most people don't think that just going on a hike is that treacherous, but it really is in Australia. It's not that there's the snakes and spiders are the main issue, it's actually the nature itself. It is highly beguiling and the heat alone is a huge factor into why many people end up dying on Australian trail walks. But that aside, the crime was very well done. It kept me completely hooked all the way to the end. And the third one has just come out and I can't wait to read it. It's going to be so good. And I'm going to see Jane Harper again this year for Adelaide Writers Week. So that's a big bonus to get onto the third one before then. Keeping in line with the Australiana theme, I also read Sulari Gentile's A Few Right Thinking Men. This is a Roland Sinclair mystery and I absolutely utterly adore this. It is set in 1930s Sydney with a very wealthy man who is he's an artist, he's a painter, and his set of friends are more of the working class communists, and it's just seeing how that political leaning played out during the 1930s, and it was such a huge thing because obviously you have the fascism and nationalism that were coming to the forefront in Europe. Communism was very much after the Russian Revolution, and then you had this tide of national fervour that was kind of trying to combat against the communism. So it was really, really fascinating. I had no idea about the class politics that were clashing in Sydney at the time, but it is an absolutely fantastic read. A really interesting mystery as well. I wouldn't say that the mystery is the entire book. It's a really interesting book. I wouldn't say the crime is the main focus, it's really the characters, but I do love a character-driven story. So that was wonderful, good fun. So next I read The Coroner's Lunch by Colin Cotterill. This one was so much fun. It was very, very interesting because the coroner himself, the coroner is actually an old man. I'd say he'd be in his 70s, and it's going into early communist Laos in the 1970s. So it was incredibly fascinating to see how that politics was playing out, and this was coming from a man who spent most of his life, mainly because his wife was so enamored and she was such a crusader for the communist ideals, to see this man at the end of his life living in a communist society and trying to get through different murder mysteries. There is a little bit of a fantastical element at times to the story that very much threw me out of it for a bit, but I really liked the character and I liked the introduction of the side characters. I thought they were very well developed. Overall though, I think it would probably sit in about a 3-star category for me. Whilst it was highly enjoyable, the mystery really wasn't there. It was picked up at times, but it was very much lost in the middle, only to have a really good resolution. So it was a bit of a hard one, but it was good fun. Next, I read Mr. Chopra's Unexpected Delivery. I have to check that one, by Vaseem Khan, and that was so much fun. It was set in India, and it's about it was about a retiring police chief who really starts to get upset by the politics that are being played out within the police itself, because he was such a believer of straightforward thinking policing. And it was just such an interesting read, because he gets an unexpected delivery from his eccentric uncle of a baby elephant. And perhaps Ganesh, and so he calls him Baby Ganesh, and perhaps that's exactly what he needs to help him with retirement. But at the same time, he also needs to have an outlet for his more investigative qualities, and so he actually starts up his own detective agency. And I really like this. It's kind of like the starting of the idea, the developing of the characters. So I believe it's more of an introductory first book, and then you definitely get into the grittiness in the second book. It was quite good. I'd probably leave it in like 3 stars again. The whole mystery itself I didn't think was greatly centric to the plot. It was very much developing the characters and the backstory for what will be the detective agency. So I think it was very much a prequel almost, and the second book would be the main meat of the detective agency. Next one that I absolutely loved, brilliant, absolutely, I don't know how many times I have to say absolutely in this description, but The Treachery of Spies by Amanda Scott was brilliant. Absolutely, there it goes again, brilliant. But it is a bit of a dual narrative. So you start off as a murder has taken place, almost an assassination of an elderly woman in her 90s in France. And it turns out it's an assassination style of the Marquis, or the resistance fighters during World War II. So what is quite fascinating is they actually find out that the woman herself, the murdered woman, was in the resistance during World War II. And so it just opens up all these secrets, and all these mysteries start unraveling out. And of course the gallant female detective or female inspector, she has to unravel them all and discover what's going on. But at the same time, you also get the murdered woman's backstory from her perspective, going back into 1942, and also some other resistance fighters that you meet, you get their backstories as well. And it just makes for such a full encompassing story. But it is absolutely brilliant. It kept me on the edge of my seat because in the resistance there was a traitor, and this group of resistance fighters, even in their 90s, have been trying to find out who it was. And so I find that brilliant, just to have this long drawn out cat and mouse game that just comes to the fold within these last few days. It is a perfect narrative for anyone who loves historical fiction, thriller and mystery. I thoroughly recommend. Next, I read another Australian book, which is called Resurrection Bay by Emma Visnick. This is set in Melbourne and then going out into a more country Victorian town. It was quite good. The main detective himself, he is more of a forensic detective, security detail, and he is actually deaf. He's been deaf since childhood. He has partial hearing, but what I was a bit disappointed was it had a really good premise for the murder mystery itself, but it was so heavily engrossed in his personal life and his backstory. I think by this point, after having such a brilliant read in The Treachery of Spies, where it just kept me going through every single character story and trying to find out who did what, and are they really telling the truth, or what was that person looking at in that photo, to then come to this one where he's internalizing so much, and it was really hard to like him as a main character. I liked the writing. I thought it was really well done, and I really liked the mystery premise. It just wasn't solely focused on it, which I think it should have been a little bit more. But I've got the second one. I definitely want to try it again because the writing was so well done, and I just want to see where she takes the main character, where she takes him beyond this story, because it has so much potential to be brilliant. Okay, so after that one I read The Ruin, and this was astoundingly amazing. It was so good. It's set in Ireland, modern day Ireland, and they find that a young man has been missing, and then they find him dead, and his murder actually links back to an earlier death of his mother. He was adopted out because in Irish politics and law at the time, the children couldn't be separated from the family if it broke up the family unit, even if it was an abusive environment for the children to be living in. So it's quite an interesting look into what the legal system was for children's safety at the time, back in the early 80s, and how that has greatly changed and is still in the process of changing in current Irish society. So this was absolutely fabulously done. I think the pacing and there's a dual narrative going between his girlfriend and also some other characters, but it was really her and the other. The detective in this is brilliant. So Cormac Correilly has moved to Galway, and he actually started in Galway and then he moved to Dublin, where he's been quite a famous popular detective, but he's moved back with his girlfriend, and he's been seeing her quite seriously. But he finds that there's something wrong within the policing staff at Galway. So it is really fascinating. It completely surprised me at the end how they finished it off. It was brilliant. And Dervla McTiernan's second book is actually coming out very soon, called The Scholar. I have already put it on order. I am so ready for the next book. It will be brilliant. I just cannot wait. And lastly, I only had about 2 days left of December at this point, and so I thought I'll quickly pick up a very short, fun read, and of course that's going to be A Phryne Fisher by Kerry Greenwood. Now I only think this is number 7. I have to check, but this is only quite early in the series. There are quite a number. I don't think I'm even halfway yet, but it was really great. What's quite funny is that I listened to an interview and she said with this one it would please the Agatha Christie fans because it's a closed house murder. There's different things that are being left around, clues to be discovered, and also what is fascinating is that Kerry Greenwood is actually more of a Dorothy Sayers fan, so you can definitely see that in her style of writing and the era. She makes this kind of more fun element approach to it rather than that very direct Agatha Christie, the evidence of so and so being presented. But this was really fun. It was very much a big break from her usual writing style with Phryne Fisher, but it really got me back into the series. I can't wait to read the next one, which is Raisins and Almonds, so I can't wait to get to the next one. Hopefully there is a little bit more Agatha Christie elements in it because this was just so well constructed. Now I just wanted to mention I did have 2 that appeared in my Cloak and Dagger TBR, and that was The Borrowed, which is a murder mystery set in Hong Kong, and I had read half of it before I went to Hong Kong, and it was really freaky actually seeing all the place names as I'm driving past them on the bus and go, oh, that's where that murder happened in the book. But it was really fascinating. I haven't finished it yet because I had to stop reading it because I was just getting so bogged down and I just had to pick up another book. So I am going through it slowly. It's actually set up in 5 short stories going back in history to see where this where the mystery leads and where it originated from. So I think that is a really fascinating perspective. It is still a current read. The other one that I didn't quite DNF but I did have to put down was Betty Church and the Suffolk Vampire. I think my problem with this one is I had just read a brilliant book. I think I just read A Few Right Thinking Men, and the problem with this one is the characters are so polar opposite and it's not presented in a good way. It is almost as if one character is there just to be annoying to the other character. There is no other purpose for that character being there, and I did get a fair kind of a little way into it, but I had to put it down. It was just bumming me out too much, and I just really wanted to get into some more fantastic murder mysteries for the Cloak and Dagger reads. So I think I will pick this back up. I think I will give it another chance, as that character was so all mind consuming and distracting me so heavily. But I think I did like the premise. I think it was a good premise. I want to see how it's developed though. So yeah, that was not a DNF, but a put aside for later. So I hope you had an absolutely wonderful Cloak and Dagger readathon like I did. I got so much reading done, and I was just so thoroughly in a mystery reads, I just couldn't put them down. But I cannot wait to check out everyone's wrap-ups. I'll be doing that very shortly. But thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to do it again this year, now that it's 2019. I'm going to be planning so many mystery reads for December, but I can't wait to see you all next time. Happy reading! Bye!